What the countdown? Hello, everybody out there, and welcome to the Wellness Revolution with Dr. Robert Wiedemann. By the way, you can catch Dr. Robert Wiedemann at healthreform90@gmail.com or text him at 406-270-3754, tinyurl.com/Docs Minerals. How you doing, Doc? And how you doing, Marvin?
Hey, I'm doing fine.
Doing good. We've had some real challenges here with the last show getting taken down supposedly by the uploader, and so the link doesn't work anymore. So we're going to fix that. Marvin, you want to explain how we're going to fix that?
Well, no, I'm not going to give them our secrets. Hell no. Why not? The more we talk about our problems, the more they're going to figure out how to screw us over again, right?
Yep, that's right. That's right. The cable guys do not want this out. So be sure you watch this show as soon as possible, because they're going to probably take it down right away afterwards. So, Marvin, do you have part 2 for us to upload?
I do. I just want to get into my, hold on here. I'm trying to figure out how to get back. Bear with me here. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so I need to share my screen. How's that?
That's fine.
So this is where we left off last time, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so essentially, we talked about the basic 90 nutrients. We talked about Dr. Wallach. We talked about all this research. We talked about mineral deficiencies. We talked about our genetic potential. Now we're going to talk about how the brain communicates with these cells and what may interfere with these neurotransmitters. And Dr. Wiedemann, you put together an excellent presentation. This is really, I give you credit for this, because being a chiropractor, you really have helped us understand what innate intelligence is.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
This illustration here really is going to help us make that connection, because it's no different between animals and humans, and that's why we can use animals as laboratory experiments to see how these pharmaceutical drugs and nutrition actually work. So you can actually use a laboratory animal and see the results of nutrition the same way you can see results on pharmaceutical medication.
Yes, and the illustration here really shows the dependence of our bodies on its connection with the brain. What we want to emphasize is the inherent recuperative powers of the body. God has placed within us an intelligence that literally knows how to run every part of your body. The body needs no help, just no interference. So if we can maintain healthy communication between brain cell and tissue cell, our bodies can maintain their health. Now, it does require that all the 90 essential nutrients be present in all the tissues at all times in order for this to function properly. If they are not, now here's what happens. Let's say that you have nerve interference. The body will make compromises because of interference. It has to adapt the best it can. So it takes other avenues to try to keep the body as well as it possibly can. Now, this means that in absence of all the 90 essential nutrients, the body is literally robbing Peter to pay Paul. It will take from one part of the body and send it to another part of the body in order to try to maintain its health. But at best, deficiency diseases are symptoms that are a result of a lack of those nutrients or of nerve interference. Now, Marvin, regardless, I mean, you've been on Dr. Wallach's protocols for a long time, but once in a while I have to remind you to get checked, don't I?
That's exactly correct. So basically, one of the things that I've learned from Dr. Wiedemann is that if because of my upper cervical injury from my parachute accident back in 1988, I have severe ankylosing of my C1, and so basically, essentially, that brainstem when it comes that brainstem comes through my atlas. That atlas can be pinching my brainstem. That really affects my blood pressure. It affects my ability to focus and concentrate. Affects my ability to sleep, and a lot of pain. And so when my atlas is actually out, my legs, one leg, left leg is about half an inch, sometimes a 3/4 inch shorter than the right leg. When I get on the scale, when Dr. Dawson adjusts me, puts me on a scale, and he determines see if there's a balance, right leg, left leg are balanced correctly. If your upper cervical is out of alignment, a subluxation causing the brainstem to cause interference there, then you'll see misalignment of your hips, and you'll see it in the length of your legs. You also see imbalance anywhere from 2 3 pounds to I've had up to 28 pounds of out of balance. That's most extreme I've ever had. But my point is this: is that I've seen so much success with this. I introduced this to my wife Julie. She loves it. Introduced to my children, and they love this form of chiropractic adjustment. And one of the things that really helped me understand this, Dr. Wiedemann, is that I'm an engineer. And so when you explain to me that the atlas is like the footer or foundation of a building, well, I understand that because the footer and foundation of a building is structured. You place it level and square in the dirt in the ground, and then you build your 20-story building or 100-story building on top of that. Well, that foundation footer has to be exactly perfect, because if it's leaning a little bit to the left or right, by the time you get to the 120th floor, you've got some major issues because one side of the building is heavier than the other side, and it can cause some major problems. So when you see these skyscrapers in the cities, think of it. Those skyscrapers are perfectly vertical. They're not leaning left or right, but think of it as your upper cervical spine and your cervical spine, your upper cervical spine, the thoracic vertebrae, as well as the lower vertebrae. If those are not properly aligned, you've got major problems. And then as we go through these slides, you'll see make that connection. So as an engineer, I understood how these things connect, and I think, well, I'll give this a try. So when Dr. Wiedemann, he came out to Utah, and he was working with Dr. Dawson to do my upper cervical x-rays. And what's interesting is that they taped a little brass little
lead. They were made out of lead.
Or lead or whatever it is.
Yeah, we had some brass pieces on your ear, and then we had one on the mastoid process, so that on the lateral film we could identify where the transverse process of your atlas was, so that we could make proper contact at the right point. Because you can't just tell from x-ray where to contact the atlas vertebra. The more accurate you can be, the better off you are. So we have to have accuracy in where we contact the vertebra, and we have to have accuracy in the subluxation reduction pathway. In other words, let's see if we can take a look at the next video or next slide here, Marvin. Let's go to the next one here. See if we can get to the one where we're actually talking about the structure here. Keep going. Next one. There we go. Next one. Next one. There. Next. Keep going, because there's another one that has a little better. I think. Let's see. Keep going. Keep going. I thought that there was a. Yeah. There we go. This is the one. If we can take a look at the pre and post subluxation body imbalance here, you can see that the relative to the atlas now in the view on the right, the atlas is actually level. Now there's no lines drawn on it, and there's no lines drawn down the middle of the head like there is on the left. But you can see that what happens is the head will actually turn in. Now we might even see on the next slide. Let's take a go look at the next slide here. One more. Oh, here, yeah, one more. Let's go another one here. Another one here. Keep going here. Keep going. Yeah, go through all that. Well, maybe I'm sorry. Let's back up because I guess I'm thinking of another series here.
Hold on. Let me see. Let me go out and let's see if we can find what you're looking for here. Let's just scroll through here. You see what you're looking for?
No,
So,
Doc G, are you there, Doc G?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, could you please put the other series up?
There's no other series attached right now.
Can you reattach the one we had up before?
You have to attach that.
Oh, I thought you had. I thought that you kept that. Okay.
I haven't done anything. You restarted your machine, didn't you?
Yeah, I guess that we. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's see the one where the Nasium X-ray is there with the pre and post. Yeah, put your cursor to the right, other right, right there. Okay, this is like a 3.5-year-old or something like that. So you can see the line down the middle of the head, and the Atlas plane line is way high on this one. And there's like a 19-degree kink with the lower neck. And you can see on the post X-ray how we actually used leverage to adjust that back to normal there. Okay, and it righted that little girl's head, and the lower angle was just about 1 degree off after that. That was quite a correction, and the second vertebra got corrected from being twisted to the right 12.5 degrees to a right 1. So that was quite a correction there. So that's kind of what we mean by the atlas subluxation. And Marvin, the leg imbalance is actually called the atlas subluxation syndrome, and it's a result of a tractionization of the brainstem. There are two centers in the brainstem, facilitatory and inhibitory, which affect the extensor muscles of the spine. And so there's actually 4 muscles down there, 2 on the front, 2 on the back, actually 4 on the back. So 2 on the front, 4 on the back. You got the psoas muscles and in the front, and the erector spinae and the quadratus lumborum on the back side. That can, those can, various ones go into spasm as a result of this subluxation. We call it an atlas subluxation complex. And the syndrome that comes from it is the spastic contracture of muscles that pull the pelvis out of alignment, twist the lower hips, twist the entire spine, and throw the spine out of balance. So when we correct this, a spasm is a sustained involuntary contraction of the muscles. And so when we remove that imbalance, those centers can properly function, and then it relieves the spastic contracture. Okay.
Dr. Wiedemann, I just want to interject here. So if you look at, I wish I had my x-rays up here, but I don't, but if I can find them, I'll put them up there one of these days. But the first adjustment I got from Dr. Wiedemann, when he properly adjusted my atlas, I couldn't believe, all of a sudden it felt like there was rushing waters going down my back. And I just had this incredible sensation going down my back, all the way down my spinal column. And it was like, wow, I've never experienced anything like that. It was kind of like the floodgates were open up and I can finally get, it's kind of like I can finally breathe, or, that's kind of how it felt.
The first chiropractic adjustment in history was an upper cervical adjustment. And, D.D. Palmer did the best at his time, that he knew. He didn't have x-rays in those days. But the interesting thing is that x-ray was discovered the very same year that chiropractic was discovered, in 1895. Alexander Wilhelm Röntgen discovered X-ray that year, and I believe that it was divinely inspired to happen because B.J. Palmer, his son, now his son was just a little boy when he watched that first chiropractic adjustment in history. Okay, and so D.D. Palmer said it was he was afraid of being accused of resetting necks, when by the medical profession. He got put in jail anyway for what he was doing, but he got put in the Scott County Jail for practicing medicine without a license. But and then there were many people who were put in jail for being chiropractors in those days. See, I forget the name of the gentleman that was the most jailed chiropractor in history. Let me see if I can look it up.
Well, Dr. Whitman, while you're looking up on that, I want to go back to our beginning here and kind of talk about. Let's see here. We were in this one right here. This is kind of where we started tonight. And so, as you can see, it doesn't matter if it's the animal or human brain, those neurons from the brain will actually, on the left-hand side, you have the efferent signals. The right-hand side, you have afferent signals. In other words, the neurons going to the cells, then the cells will give feedback to the brain, and that's the return. And so there could be interference on the outgoing signals. And there also could be interference on the return signals. So kind of give you an idea, we're going to take you through a series of these pictorial slides here to help you understand and visualize how the brain communicates with the cells. Remember.
Hey, Marvin, I found it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Herbert Ross Reaver is widely recognized as the most jailed chiropractor in history. A pioneering chiropractor in the early 20th century, Reaver was imprisoned 12 times in Ohio between 1920 and 1930 for practicing chiropractic without a medical license, as the profession faced intense legal opposition at the time. He earned the nickname the most jailed chiropractor for his repeated defiance of anti-chiropractic laws, spending over a year in total behind bars to advocate for the field's legitimacy. Reaver later became a vice president of the International Chiropractors Association and was honored in chiropractic halls of fame for his contributions. So you stop and think about it. There was a lot of history in Ohio on our frontier, and he was a frontiersman for chiropractic. And but anyway, we have the brain actually regulates the inherent recuperative powers of the body through its efferent impulses coming down the efferent side to the tissue cells. Now, when the tissue cells function, there is actually quite a few things that happen. And Doc G, can you please put the slide up of the simple cycle real quick here?
There is no slide. Just
Yeah,
what
there
Marvin
is. I uploaded one before. I hope you didn't take it down.
No, I haven't taken anything down, but you restarted your computer.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
We're having fun on live broadcast, aren't we? Here, we're some old geezers trying to figure out this technology.
Yeah. Well, anyway, maybe I can show it next week or something like that. But so go to the next slide here. Okay. So here we have the mental impulses going down the efferent side to the tissue cell. And there's several steps in between. Okay. So, the tissue cell has to receive it. It has to put it into action in the function of the tissue cell. Then the function of the tissue cell is recorded as vibrations. Okay. So let's look at the next slide here. So those vibrations go back to the brain cell. The brain cell receives those and interprets them from the tissues. Basically the brain has a computer to the body. It knows what's going on in the tissue cells. Every tissue cell is in communication with the brain, okay, on the afferent side, okay?
So Dr. Wiedemann, I'd like to just interject something. And Dr. Wiedemann, you made a very important statement here. vibrations. Every mineral molecule in our body has a different frequency or vibration. And so that is what's in the DNA, the ladder of the DNA. That's where the mineral molecule is. We talked about the metallic finger the last episode. Well, that's exactly what the brain is looking for. They're looking for a perfect harmony of the DNA. And if the mineral molecule is missing, then you do not have perfect harmony. And there's actually a frequencies, biomeridian, they call them biomeridian frequencies. I think that's how you pronounce it. And so the brain is looking for that harmony. If it doesn't have that harmony, there's going to be symptoms starting to surface. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and your brain can detect that. So, if you, okay, let's go to the next one here. Okay, so we have this communication, and every literal tissue in the body has to have that communication, all of them, because the brain, the heart doesn't have its own brain, the eyeballs don't have its own brain, the lungs don't have their own brain, the stomach doesn't have its own brain, the liver doesn't have its own brain, the ovaries, the uterus, the testicles, the bladder, and the sex organs, none of them have their own brain. They are dependent upon this pathway between brain and body. And you do know that if you sever this spinal cord, you know that organs cease to have proper regulation. Okay. Now, so there has to be a healthy relationship between brain cell and tissue cell. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. Anything that interferes between the brain and the body lessens the vital powers. Those vital powers are what the brain gives to the body, and brings about a deadening of the sensibilities of the mind. What are sensibilities, Marvin?
Well, if, for example, if let's say I have cut my toe, I can feel the pain.
Yeah, the ability to sense.
Yep.
In other words, this is on a micro level, though. You may not consciously feel something happening, but your brain does. And we call this interference between brain cell and tissue cell dis-ease. And basically means disharmony between the brain cell and tissue cell. Okay? So go ahead and let's go to the next one here. Things that cause interference, physical factors, okay, and biochemical factors. The physical factors are vertebral subluxation, direct injury, we may sever the nerve, and things that cause interference, okay, direct injury, and biochemical factors, okay. What is a subluxation here? Somehow we're missing something, Marvin. Back up.
Let's see.
Oh, maybe, okay. Okay, I see what we're doing. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next one. We're still talking about physical factors here. Subluxation. The subluxation is the condition of a vertebra that has lost its proper juxtaposition relative to the segment above, the one below, or both, to an extent less than a luxation. Luxation is an old-fashioned term which means dislocation. So it's less than a dislocation, which impinges nerves and interferes with the transmission of mental impulses. Now, a mental impulse is an intelligent. It is a packet of intelligence that is transmitted from the brain cell to the tissue cell. Okay, go ahead and let's go to the next one here. So structure and function are related. There is a response always to this displacement in the spine. Okay. So if there's a subluxation, it causes body imbalance and it alters function, and it can alter literally any tissue cell in your body. Okay. Go ahead and let's go to the next one here. So here we actually see a full spine x-ray that I took. It didn't include the upper cervical spine, but it shows the curvature in the spine. There was an 18-degree curvature in the upper dorsal, in the dorsal spine, and a 13.7-degree curvature in the lumbar spine. And then after 3-month follow-up, after 7 corrections, it reduced the dorsal spine curvature to 0.7 degrees and the lumbar spine to 3.1 degrees. Okay, let's go to the next one here. And of course, here we have the correction of the, look at the way there was a lateral curvature. There's actually scoliosis in this little girl's spine to the left of quite a few degrees curvature there. Okay, so after reduction, it straightened that out. Now we see a little deviation still in the dorsal spine. At this age, with a 3 or 4 year old, it's pretty hard to have them sit really straight. They're so wobbly at that age that sometimes even if they have good posture, it's not, it shows up not sitting exactly straight. So, okay, let's go to the next one here. Okay, the second thing that causes interference in the safety pin cycle. Now, this is not taught by chiropractic colleges. This is actually, our extrapolations. If in my experience with longevity, there are biochemical factors. There's nutritional deficiencies that can cause nerve interference, and drugs will cause nerve interference. It's called pharmakia. Okay. So, biochemistry and function are related. And I don't care if it's your brain cell, your blood cell, your kidney cell, your liver cells, your bone cell, stomach cell, pancreas cell, heart cell, they all need the 90 essential nutrients in order to function properly. And when you take them, they flow through all the blood vessels of your body to every part of your body. So it does make a huge difference. And let's take a look at the safety pin cycle now. We call it safety pin cycle. It's actually called the simple cycle. Okay, safety pin cycle, there can be interference between brain cell and tissue cell. And the things that can cause interference are vertebral subluxation, nerve, see, what does ND stand for? I forgot.
Nerve damage.
Nerve damage? Okay. Nerve damage. Yeah, you can cut a nerve. Okay, go ahead. Next one. And drugs. Okay, vertebral subluxation, direct injury, and drugs. Okay. And that can cause interference with the tissue cell. Okay, so what happens as a result? The tissue cell then begins to malfunction. If we can show that here. Interference with mental impulses causes dis-ease. Now that is signaled back to the brain in the form of pain or symptoms. Okay. And so the brain cell receives an alarm signal or pain or symptoms. Okay. So that when we remove the subluxation or if we can repair the nerve damage, remove the drugs from the system, then the brain cell can adequately contact the tissue cells. The tissue cells come at ease, and then automatically the pain and symptoms disappear. So, when you remove the cause of disease, healing is imminent. Okay, you don't have to treat the body in order for the body to recover.
And this is one of the things that we like to always reiterate. Give the body what it needs, all the 90 essential nutrients. As long as you're digesting those nutrients, the body will cure itself. It will heal itself. And this is as simple as it's just so simple. It's simple math, health 101.
Yeah, and this is why chiropractic and nutrition go hand in hand. This is why they're brothers. I mean, had I known what I know now when I was in practice, I'd have made a lot more difference in my patients. Of course, when I started, Dr. Wallach wasn't around. I was started in 1978 was when I first got into practice, and I had no inkling that I was going to meet up with Dr. Wallach later and learn what I know now. And so go ahead and hit the next button here. So then you end up with relief, and then the brain cell next video so the brain cell no longer is receiving impulses telling it that, or nerve impulses saying that there's pain and suffering going on. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Notice that the last stages of dis-ease are not the first, okay, to appear. Okay, now what happens if we have interference on the sensory side? Now there's a little difference here. We've got to watch this, because I've had patients get adjusted, and in fact, this happened to me when I first got adjusted by Dr. Gregory. I all night long I had symptoms, and I would have called him up in the middle of the night, but the next morning I felt wonderful. So I'm glad I didn't call him up in the middle of the night. But I really detoxed after my first adjustment. I went to the bathroom and just totally emptied out. I mean, it was, I passed all kinds of stuff through my bowels, that night. Then by morning, I was better. I was tons better, and I had an appetite. So, okay, so let's go to the next slide here, Marvin. Can we have afferent interference? And the answer is yes. Vertebral supplement. Now this is not taught in chiropractic philosophy. B.J. Palmer felt it was all on the efferent side, and Dr. Gregory once asked him, "Well, what about a mixed nerve?" Because there are mixed nerves that have both efferent and afferent fibers in it, and B.J. wouldn't answer him. So, vertebral subluxation can affect the sensory side. Drugs can affect the sensory side. Many of them, aspirin, painkillers, all affect the sensory side. So, and drugs and nerve damage can affect the sensory side. So,
I want to add a little correction. ND stands for nutritional deficiencies.
Oh, nutritional deficiency.
Yeah, we actually
nutritional deficiency.
That. ND is nutritional deficiency. So the same thing is true for the efferent side, vertebral subluxation, nutritional deficiency, and drugs. So we want to correct that, so you all know that it's a lack of nutrition that can cause interference in the efferent side as well as afferent side.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. So it blocks sensation to the brain. So the brain does not have what's called intellectual adaptation. What you're doing is blocking intellectual adaptation. And so blocking intellectual adaptation, there's inadequate mental impulses, which causes dis-ease and can cause the attempt of the body to send pain and symptoms to the brain. Okay, so if we restore all required nutrients, remove the interference, and remove the drugs, and so we end up feeling pain. Remember, we talked about that you can have symptoms after you're adjusted, okay? It doesn't mean that you're going to, only a third of the patients walk out and feel wonderful after an adjustment. Most of them have some symptoms, especially on the third day afterwards, okay? We call it the third day syndrome. So you end up with pain and symptoms after restored sensation. So then intellectual adaptation takes place, okay? So you have restoration of nerve impulses either by adjustments, restored nutrition, or drug removal may result in temporary pain, okay? So adaptive mental impulses are sent down. Adaptation takes place. Tissue cells come to ease. And you end up with relief. So we have the brain cell restores to normal. And so you have that normal, healthy relationship between brain cell and tissue cell. And Marvin, I think you have learned the difference between dis-ease and ease, haven't you?
Oh, I cannot tell you the difference. I tell you what, uh, it, first of all, my upper cervical is so sensitive that just a little trauma to my head will cause it to go out of balance, and that's not normal. But it's because of my severe injury and it's for many years of ankylosing. It doesn't take much for that atlas to want to slip back into its old position where it used to be. And so once I get it corrected, it just makes a night and day difference. I can turn my head left, I can turn my head right without any uh, you know problem. But it's something that I have to constantly once a week. I've got to get adjusted or I get checked. And it's very seldom do I go from week to week to where it's actually holding. And so I just learned that's what I have to do. It actually, when I'm out, when my atlas is out, it drives my blood pressure way up. I mean, there's no blood pressure medication that works for me. So the only way I can manage my blood pressure is because of the pain is so severe that I'll just get adjusted. And, that's how I manage my severe upper cervical whiplash damage.
So your wife does not have to do this as often as you, right?
Oh no, matter of fact, there's times when they'll hold 2 or 3 months. Even the kids, they'll hold they might get adjusted 3 or 4 times a year. But my son is very active in martial arts, so they're constantly doing sparring and things like that. So he gets hit in the head, and we go. We can tell real quickly if he's out because he stutters. And when I lay him down on the floor and on the carpet, and I check his legs, and his legs usually an eighth of an inch, a quarter of an inch off, and I know we need to get him adjusted. And it's interesting is this: when we get him adjusted, he doesn't stutter like he does when he's out of alignment.
Yeah, it's amazing. There are people that I remember Dr. Robert Goodman down in now he passed away just a couple of years ago, but he had done some research projects on epilepsy and had people with epilepsy that they responded to upper cervical chiropractic care. And now here's the things that drugs cannot do. Drugs cannot make you adapt to the environment. They are static in what they do. This is why medical doctors are constantly having to switch up medications, because here's what the body does. If you try to force a symptom, what they're trying to do is counteract the symptoms is what they are. They're not healing the body. They're actually trying to what we call B.J. Palmer called it hyper the hypos and hypo the hypers. In other words, if you have hyper means too much function, and hypo means too little function. D.D. Palmer says that all dis-ease is either too much or too little function. And the idea was to remove interference so that your body would regulate itself. And this feedback system is something that drugs can never help. It can never aid the body in adapting. All they do is suppress symptoms, and your body will actually adapt to drugs. Let's say that you have let's say that you have rapid heartbeat, so you give a drug to slow the heart down. The body will eventually take that drug and switch its function to slowing the heart down. So this is why they have to constantly change medications, because a drug is basically counterfeit nutrition, I think. That's what I think, Marvin.
The simple thing for me, Dr. Wiedemann, is that I see pharmaceuticals as blockers and inhibitors. Let's use pain medication as an example. That's one thing. I've been in pain, and doctors want to prescribe me pain medications. No. So why not? Because you're in pain. Well, I prefer to have pain because that way I don't put more injurious stress to that area. And so, yeah, I might not be able to sleep as well, but I'd rather have what I've managed to do is that I might be able to sleep, when I'm in severe pain, I might be able to sleep 3 to 4 hours before I wake up and succumb to my pain. Well, I get up and I manage my pain by getting up and doing some work in the middle of the night in my office. Get tired, I go back to bed and go to sleep. And I use a natural sleep aid, a natural melatonin, and that helps me relax a little bit. But that's how I learned how to manage my dis-ease. I don't want to get hooked on codeine. I don't want to get hooked on these painkillers. There's a lot of veterans out there who are severely, a lot of pain from war injuries and things like that, and they're hooked on these meds. And I tell you what, when you get hooked on these painkillers, it's difficult to get off of them. It's very difficult.
Yeah, we call that medicosis. Relying upon these drugs and things like that. We also call it pharmakia. So okay, let's go to the next one here and see what we got here. So now all birth defects in animals and humans are developed within the first trimester of pregnancy. Marvin, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's really important to understand this. I have really had a lot of success with childless couples and couples who have actually had multiple miscarriages. And once we get them on 100% gluten-free diet and we get them on the basic 90 nutrients, we have tremendous success. Within 2 years' time, a lot of these childless couples will have a successful pregnancy. But one thing Dr. Wallach really emphasizes that he wants anybody who wants to start a family, make sure they get proper nutrified, the body properly nutrified 6 months to a year before they even try to have a family. So with that said, the embryo's organs are being completely developed by the end of the first trimester. In other words, you have complete functions of every organ, in that embryo. The second and third trimester, that embryo is just growing in size. Now, so think of it this way. As an engineer, I'm supposed to put in make sure a certain amount of rebar gets in the footer and foundation. I cannot put that rebar in after the roof is put on. I had to put it in before the roof is put on. I had to, each phase of construction of that building, I have to make sure that the electrical wiring, the plumbing, and all that stuff is put in correctly before we cover up the walls of drywall. So the same thing is true when you're making a healthy baby. And that is, if the mother is not getting all the basic 90 nutrients, it increases the risk of her having a child born prematurely with a so-called birth defect, or we can also have it called biochemical birth defects, such as muscular dystrophy and cystic fibrosis are considered biochemical birth defects, which means that you can manage that birth defect after they're born with biochemistry, which is AKA nutrition. So, but there are certain things that are not reversible. For example, Down syndrome. Down syndrome is actually developed in the embryo within the first 48 hours of conception because of lack of zinc. The mineral zinc is a very important part of the development of the brain, and so Down syndrome is a result of lack of zinc in the first 48 hours of development of conception. That's when that part of the brain is functioning. You've got cerebral palsy, same thing, same concept there. That's a birth defect that's irreversible because of lack of certain nutrients. You've got spina bifida. Those are certain minerals, nutrients that are missing. That's basically a tiny little, you can have severe case of spina bifida is the lower lumbars where you have hole was open spinal, you can see the open spine. Or I've actually seen babies where have just a tiny little pinhole in the back of the lower lumbar, but the skin was healed up, but you can tell it's just a little bit of a symptom of spina bifida. But like that, I told that mother, so look, this is your first, it's like our second or third child that had that symptom. So I said, the next one may not be as lucky, because if you're not supplementing properly, that tells me you have an increased chance to have another child with greater problems with spina bifida. Now
other defects like a hair lip and cleft palate. Dr. Wallach talked about foxes having hair lip and cleft palate. In the zoo that he worked at, that was the Yerkes Primate Center, wasn't that?
It was the Brookfield Zoo. He was assigned to the Brookfield Zoo and during his NIH research, and when he checked in, there was these two biologists getting ready to go up to above the Arctic Circle to catch more Arctic foxes, because they had 5 breeding pairs of Arctic foxes, and all of those had given litters off that had birth defects. And so he just got to know these guys before they shipped out. So look, so why don't you let me take care of these Arctic foxes while you're gone, and I'll see what I can do. So what Dr. Wallach did is he started making, he formulated their food with all the basic 90 nutrients, and lo and behold, the next litter that these Arctic foxes had, all 5 pairs had perfect babies. So what he did is he crossbred the sons to the brothers and sisters across, uncles and aunts, and fathers to daughters and sons back and forth. Every crossbreed that he could do to try to create a genetic disorder. He was not able to create any genetic disorders. After about 3,000 Arctic foxes in that zoo, the zoo curator came around and said, "Hey, who's responsible for all these Arctic foxes?" He says, "Well, that's Dr. Wallach's research project." So he came to Dr. Wallach and said, "Look, stop. I get the point. Says, I said, "Well, okay." So that was one of his research projects he did to prove his point that you cannot develop a genetic disorder by crossbreeding too close to your cousins, uncles, and aunts. Think about this. Way back, Adam and Eve, their sons and daughters married each other and they had offspring. Abraham's wife, Sarah, was his half sister.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's because at that time, the earth was very minerally rich back before the flood. Minerals were evenly distributed across the earth. Now, Ron Wyatt spoke to one of the astronauts that went to the moon, and they actually brought some soil back from the moon, and they grew plants in it, and they grew voraciously. And Ron Wyatt believes that that's what the earth was like before the flood. There was, in other words, when the flood came, it roiled all that up, causes it to settle out. Some of them washed off into the oceans, as the ocean floors collapsed. It caused the water to recede very quickly off the earth and literally washed a lot of these minerals to the bottom of the ocean.
And we touched on that last time about the only way we actually replenish the crust of Earth with minerals is actually volcanic ash. That's the only form of rejuvenation of the Earth's minerals is out from volcanic ash. So now we do have, as I said, we do have access to these prehistoric plant matter, which have not fossilized. So what we take this prehistoric plant matter and we can add it to an existing fertilizer program, add it to an existing feeding program for animals as well as humans. So we take these prehistoric minerals, plant matter, and we extract these minerals. And that's a whole nother subject, but that's basically how we get around all these nutritional deficiency diseases. Just remember, you must have the mineral cofactors so that you can utilize the vitamins, and essential fatty acids.
It's the problem is that we touched on this last time, and the United States has, I think, 86% deficiency in earth minerals. Is that what it is, Marvin?
It's actually 85%, if I remember correctly. Over the last 100 years, North America has lost over 85% of their minerals on topsoil.
Yeah, yeah. And many places around the world have lost a lot of theirs, not as much as the United States has. So the only option is, we're not going to remineralize what's lost. So, there are minerals that you can put, we call them blooming minerals, that you can put on your soils. But really, the real answer is to get your nutrients, and we have a source of that is very complete in terms of your minerals. If you do nothing else, take minerals.
There is actually, I met a gentleman by the name of Steve Groff from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and he has actually developed a really good remineralization of the topsoil by planting, and I forget the name of the plant, but what it is it's a plant that has roots that go down 10 to 30 feet. I mean, it's way down there, and they're getting minerals at depth and brings up into the canopy of that plant. So he doesn't harvest the plant for its fruit or vegetable. He actually use that plant to mulch back into the ground. And according to a local, I can't remember which university it was that did the soil sample and study of his, but according to the university study, he was able to increase his mineral content by 10%. Over a period of, I'm not too sure exactly how many years, I don't have the data in front of me, but it was enough to where it got the attention of universities. And so Steve Groff actually has been doing this for over 20 years. And I met him back, 15 years ago. And I saw his topsoil, man. He was he could just dig up a handful of that topsoil. There was fish worms there in every handful of soil he dug up. So he did the no-till farming. He was all about no-tilling.
Well,
And
alfalfa is notorious for that also,
yeah,
because those roots reach down 30 feet or more, and people mulch those in too, and that also is this is why they used to rotate crops all the time.
exactly.
Today, what they're doing in Iowa, they're raising all these crops to turn the corn into alcohol, of all things. Now, farming has really changed since the days when I was a kid. I mean, we had a farmer that lived next to us, and the first year he would put oats in for 2 years, then he would put alfalfa in for 2 years, and then corn for 2 years, and it would, he constantly rotated his crops. Well, we don't see that anymore. We see people doing year after year after year of corn and beans and corn and beans and corn and beans,
Mhm.
and the beans are shipped overseas and all that kind of stuff, but they're all GMO. They're glyphosate. You know, they're just abusing the soil like you wouldn't believe. So go ahead and cover this one, Marvin.
So one of the things I've been doing over the Amish and Mennonite Hutterite communities, we have, well, back in 2010, there is a nonprofit organization in Holmes County, Ohio, that monitors these so-called Amish and Mennonite Hutterite birth defects. There's 186 of those at that time. Dr. Wall and I sat down and we went through all the symptoms of these birth defects, and we actually categorized them into the categories of symptoms. We came up with only 10 diseases based on the symptoms. Now, way Dr. Wall explained is that only out of the 186 of those so-called genetic disorders, there's only one of them considered a genetic disorder, which is a hemophiliac. That's a bleeder. And so that's common among some of the Amish communities, where the men born to a mother that has this gene, I don't know if what kind of gene it is, but anyway, the men actually are bleeders. They have to carry around with them at the home, or when they go work in the construction, whatever, they carry around with them a shot that forces that blood to clot if they cut themselves, or otherwise they just bleeds and they can bleed out just by a simple cut on the wrist or arm. And so that shot that they give themselves costs $10,000 per shot.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. Now, all the other so-called genetic disorders, the symptoms are consistent with Dr. Wallace's research: a lack of nutrition. Of course, that was kind of interesting because we had a huge conference there at Kime Lumber at Holmes County, Ohio, and the local hospital sent out a doctor and some nurses to try to disrupt our meeting. And the funny part about it is that we were not prepared for this, or I wasn't aware of what's going on. So when I brought Dr. Wallach up to the conference room, he grabs my arm and said, "Marvin, do you have any business cards?" So, well, yeah, here. Well, give me all the business cards you got. I'll take care of this mess. And I didn't know what he's talking about. But it was kind of funny because as I walk up closer, they were engaging every person coming to a free health seminar. So they were asking the people who are coming, these Amish people, I said, "Are you here with a free health seminar?" "Oh, yes, yes." "Well, come over here, this room right next to the conference room, and we will have you talk to Dr. So-and-so. And they had a bunch of cookies and sweets and all kinds of attractive non-gluten-free products there. And they were trying to bribe these people to come in to see the local doctor from the local hospital. I'm not going to name the hospital because anyway. But the funny part about it was within 10, 15 minutes, these people realized that they're not part of the free health seminar. They want to be part of Dr. Wallach's lecture. So what Dr. Wallach was doing is handing out his business cards. Says, "Look, if you want to be part of the Dr. Wallach lecture, this is the door you go into." So the medical profession is pretty adamant about trying to stop people from competing with their business. And so I've seen that a lot. And so my point is this: a medical doctor, unfortunately, and I don't want to badmouth people in the medical profession, but unfortunately, medical doctors and nurses, they're not allowed to teach people about alternatives to nutrition. There's a lot of medical doctors and nurses out there who actually give up their license and they want to do alternative, which I think that's great. But once they have that medical license as a medical doctor, he is required by law or by the licensed medical board. He is required to promote pharmaceuticals. And so that's the downside of a medical doctor. Now, a naturopath physician can do both. He can recommend nutrition. He can recommend pharmaceuticals. Where a chiropractor, he is not required to have a license to practice nutrition and nutritional
Well,
advice.
it's actually part of his training. Your chiropractor is more qualified than any other. It's as qualified as a naturopath, and a medical doctor is not really. They don't have nutrition like we do in chiropractic college. We have over 30 hours of, from what I remember, it's about 30 hours of nutritional training, which a medical doctor does not have. And so consequently, see your chiropractor for nutritional advice and not a medical doctor. Okay.
So here's some of the results we're seeing with all these, and I've been to many homes where they had more than one child born with these so-called genetic disorders. And once we get these ladies on the basic 90 nutrients, 100% gluten-free diet, we don't have any issues with these so-called genetic disorders. Now, what's interesting is we discovered this by total accident. And every time I start documenting this, and so we've noticed that 80% of all Amish, Mennonite, and Hutterite babies born with a birth defect, genetic disorder, or born prematurely were conceived in late summer months, that's August to September, fall, that's October, December, and winter months, January to April. So during that time period, there was a higher percentage of babies born with these so-called genetic disorders. But why is there a difference between the other months of May, June, and July? The babies who were conceived during May, June, and July had a lot less risk of being born to these families with a genetic disorder. Well, what's interesting is that the Amish and Mennonites and Hutterites, they still have their own gardens. So these mothers were out there, they were working their spring gardens. They're eating the fresh fruits and vegetables from that garden. Even though that garden may have lacking some minerals, but it was enough there to reduce the birth defects by 80%. 80%. So I would teach these Amish families, look, if you plan your family and you around these 3 months, when you conceive, you have an increased chance, you have reduced risk of having these so-called genetic disorders. But if you take these basic 90 nutrients, and all these mothers who've taken the basic 90 nutrients and follow the protocol that Dr. Wallach recommends, not a single mother gave birth to a child prematurely with a so-called genetic disorder or a birth defect. Not a single one of them. And that should be published in every medical university, but it doesn't. I mean, it's been suppressed. It's been hidden. And
just like some people that don't want this information out through our program, they are suppressing this.
So with that said, Dr. Wiedemann, we're going to be at the end of our hour here. We've got a lot of information to cover. And so next week, we'll kind of start talking about some of the agriculture stuff and how these minerals will maximize genetic potential in animals and all just some more things about in the ag, which I like to do, use some agriculture science to tie all this stuff together, because a lot of people think they can eat their way to health, and that's not the case, not even close.
So in wrap up here, if you would like to get started on the minerals, you can start with the minerals. It's a great way to start. We can also start with helping your digestion. And we can also, if you wish to contact us, we can help you fill out a health survey to figure out what your specific problems are. But the main thing is and if you need a chiropractic referral, let us know. Let me know, because I will be able to refer you to a board-certified NUCA doctor so you can be taken care of in a way that's going to really help you. So with that, Marvin, the only thing I have to say is, it's great to understand the importance. Just remember that the body has inherent recuperative powers, and anybody that wants to come along to claim to cure you, just remember there are three of all the people who claim to cure. There are only three that'll tell you the truth. That's the butcher, the tanner, and the tobacco farmer.
Well, guys, let me just say you're 100%, of course, right. But Marvin, how much food would you have to consume to get some kind of nutrients in your body that equal the nutrition that you get from longevity?
You couldn't consume that amount of food, not even close. Matter of fact, if you look at the mineral content of fruits and vegetables today, you could not eat enough of that fruit or vegetable, even if you juice it. You could not eat enough of that fruit and vegetable to make sure you get equivalent to 600 milligrams of these plant minerals per 100 miles of body weight. Now, bear in mind, there might be some, the 600 milligrams of plant-derived minerals is perfectly balanced to support a healthy genome. And that actually comes from a bioengineer. I actually am trying to remember who told me that, but it's Dr. Gerhard Strauser, the one that told me that. He said, Marvin says, what's interesting about these plant minerals is that if you look at the ratio of the different minerals to each other, they're perfectly balanced to maximize our genetic potential. You will not see that in any plant that grows on the crust of the earth today, not even close.
Well, Marvin, let me say this. Did you know that Jack LaLanne was a chiropractor?
I did not know that.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that either.
Yeah, Jack LaLanne was a chiropractor, and he lived to be about 90 years old, and he was an advocate of juicing. Juicing, does work to help raise the minerals and vitamins, but it will not bring it to the 90 essentials and in the balance that you properly need. But he was able to live to age 90 that way. I mean, he could swim and tow with his teeth a line of boats across a large body of water. And I don't remember where it was, but he, swam across, pulling that line of boats with his teeth. And he stayed very strong to the end of his life. And he was an advocate of nutrition. Maybe not the 90 essentials, like, he did what he knew.
Exactly.
And if you're doing what you know out there, we applaud you, but we're here to help. If you would like to live a better life and live longer by staying nutrified with the 90 essentials and staying in chiropractic adjustment, let us know. Let me know. My number is 406-270-3754. So you want to text me at that number or write me an email at healthreform90@gmail.com. And we're hoping to, in the very near future, have our website straightened out so that we can actually give you the direct website. But it's being blocked, just like everything else. There are little-minded people out there that do not want you to have this information. So with that, thank you very much and good night.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.